What makes me sad more than anything is we were all just going to work. I mean, that's fundamentally, we all just went to work. We commuted an hour and 20 minutes in from where we were. It was our jobs. And that was kind of what was the hardest part, was none of us were there because it was fun. We were just doing our jobs. I was on the 80th floor of Tower 1. For the first second, I actually wondered if I'd be alive in 2 minutes. It was the same day as every other day, which sounds insanely boring, but it's true. It was a beautiful Tuesday morning, if I recall correctly. Got on the train. I always took a 6:35 train into New York City from Middletown, New Jersey, down by the shore, Monmouth County. Same people almost every single day on the train. We grabbed a train in. I sat with the same person every day. Her name was Dolores, pretty much for 2 years. This is what we did. It was our ritual. In Newark, New Jersey, we all got on the PATH train. PATH trains went right in underground into the trade centers. I remember my cube was against the wall like everyone else's. Didn't think anything of it. I remember actually standing up and talking at that moment to one of my coworkers in their cube. At which point, you look up and there was a plane coming, and you saw a last second of it. I had my private pilot's license, and I could tell right away that plane wasn't in distress. It would have probably either dropped fuel or it would have been, brought down into the Hudson. A commercial pilot would never have a position like that.
We were standing all the way down, I guess, on Church Street, by Church and Franklin, roughly. And we came out of the subway. We saw the building on fire. Someone told us a plane flew into it, and we didn't think anything of it.
So
we just thought it was an accident.
The building shook in such a way that you pretty much had to regroup for a second. We had a little group of us in the main area of the building, and this is all actually happening extremely fast, faster than I'm talking about it. We were able to get out the back stairwell. So we all proceeded back down the stairwell. And at first, at that level, we were able to run down the stairwells pretty quickly. And this proceeded down through, the 70s. At which point we got out down probably early 70s. Well, so many people on the bottom floors that either had to get out, didn't feel the urgency we did, etc. We're now in the stairwell, and generally what started happening is you're 2 by 2 in the concrete stairwell. You took one step and you just waited about 5 minutes. It's about 100 degrees in the stairwell. It's extraordinarily hot, huge mess in there, and you just took a step and just waited, and that was it. Every once in a while, if somebody was hurt, we'd let them down the stairs. Every once in a while, somebody would have a really big panic attack, and the bigger guys would put their arms up and say, we're all in this together. So you had a bunch of type A New Yorkers just kind of waiting, which is a very, very unnerving feeling. The only saving grace was none of us knew the other building got hit.
Another plane just comes down, and you see it just come, I guess from the south side, just come down. All of a sudden, like 10 feet away, just spirals down right into the middle.
We were pretty well aware right away that it was a terrorist attack. You knew the history of the buildings. What else could it have been? One nice thing started happening when you got down to the 20s. Firefighters were coming up, and they pushed us off to one side. Well, logically you thought, well, the firefighters wouldn't be coming up if it's dangerous. How bad can it be? It must have just be really bad up where we were. It must be safe, or else the firefighters wouldn't be coming up.
And we saw someone who worked in the second building but was late for work, so she wasn't there, and so we were trying to console her.
She worked in the second building, like on the 92nd floor.
Finally got down to the main floor where you'd get into the tower. They were walking us in groups of 20 with a firefighter in between, and it was very strange because big glass lobby, circular doors, and all the glass was broken. Wires hanging from the ceiling, the signs that would hang above telling you where to go were all hanging. It was unbelievably scary to look at. And usually the quickest way out would be World Financial Center, which is only a couple 100 feet walk, but they told us it was too dangerous. So instead they had us walking through the mall. The whole bottom was a mall, like Victoria's Secret, literally, stores. So they had us walking through the mall in groups of 20, and you kind of walked along, and you saw a lot of damage and signs of trauma. and we were being brought up through Borders Bookstore. The firefighter behind us screamed out, "Everybody get down and get off the escalators." We all kind of dove into balls. Deepest rumble I've ever heard. Really deep shaking, wind coming over your back. And all I could think of, not knowing the other building was hit, was it must be the top of my building sheared off. What else could it be? And it made sense logically. I mean, it was horribly damaged. It could probably fall off. At that moment, all I could think of is, unfortunately, I'll be honest with you, was if it's my time to go, I just want it to be quick. It wasn't scary. It was actually very calm. People asked me, weren't you terrified? I said, no, the brain doesn't actually want you to feel pain. It was actually a very calm euphoria feeling I had. And then all of a sudden, it got quiet. And I'm a camper. If anybody's been out west into the national parks, you think you know dark and quiet. Now, this is the quietest, scariest darkness ever because all of those bright windows that were there are now obscured. It was the darkest dark. You opened your eyes, you couldn't see. And you also couldn't breathe because that dust was in there with you. It's a very strange feeling. So all of a sudden you open your eyes, you can't see and you can't breathe, and you don't really understand what happened.
How can they fight it? The other one, I'm sure if there was anybody near the ground when it was like an atomic bomb that hit. And it must have went at least 10 or 15 blocks.
The firefighter that was behind me got up, and he actually tripped on me. And he said, "Are you alive?" And I guess I was told later on by a firefighter that's actually protocol to ask the question, and I said yes. So he kind of helps me up, which was nice. I mean, I'll hang out with the guy, and he had a flashlight, and it was a very strange thing because it would look like snow. And if you ever saw a foggy night with your headlights, it flashed back at you. You could only see probably about a foot in front of you because it flashed back. And it was a very strange feeling. He told me to cover my face if I can. And I, try not to breathe in the stuff. And he tried to find the other firefighter, and you could start hearing rumblings around you of other people getting up, and unfortunately some people were screaming because you could tell they were hurt. But you didn't know where anybody else was exactly because it was the pitchest black. There was two ways out of the building, the main glass doors back on the plaza and the other exit. They decided to split up and hack their way out and see how bad a damage it was. And he kind of put me over to the side. He knew exactly where I was. And he just started taking his axe and just hacking as fast as he could because no one really knew how, the buildings came down. All of a sudden, this little ray of light comes out when he's digging kind of like a squirrel, and he starts pulling things away, and he got a little hole, and he kind of got outside. He looked both ways, and he knew where I was the whole time, which was fascinating. And he grabbed me, and he said, "Broadway is that way." He goes, "Do not look back. Do not stop running until you get Broadway. Don't worry about where your coworkers are. Just go." And he pushes me out. Somebody came up to me, a medic, and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Why?" And they said, "You're covered in blood." And I said, and I looked down, and my shirt obviously was. I was unaware of this. And they checked, and it wasn't mine. I must have looked really bad, and because I don't realize this, because I don't know any better. I actually had a family ask if they could take pictures with me and their kids. At which point I said I declined. I didn't think this was appropriate timing. Call me crazy. Somebody said to me, "Your building just came down." And I said, "No, it didn't." Completely silly. And they said, "Yes, it did." And I said, "No, it didn't come down. It was the top of my building. What are you talking about?" And they said, "Both buildings just came down." And I turn around to look back, and it's just a big pile of gray dust, and I can't see anything. I was told to just get out of the area, so I started walking north. I got about 2 blocks out, and some of the people were able to get cell phone calls in, but most people couldn't put them out because a lot of the towers were on the buildings. I figured, okay, my family should probably know I'm alive. It's a good idea. It'd be, So somebody was on the phone, and in New York style, I love New Yorkers, I'm one of them, but I'm coated in gray stuff pretty much and a mess, and I said, "Can you please tell whoever's on the other side of that phone to call my family and tell them I'm okay?" And they said no. I have to admit, it was an amusing moment. It didn't have much fight in me, though. I asked somebody else, and they said no, and to this day, I wish I knew the girl's name. She grabbed the phone from this person's hand and yelled at them and said, "What phone number would you like these poor people to call?" My family got a phone call from out of state. I think it was, I want to say Wisconsin or some weird place, and that said, "Your daughter's alive." I did know people who didn't come out. We all went up the same elevators, and if they went up in any of the other elevators from 78, I knew they didn't come out that day by where the plane hit. I did that first day when I got back on that train to get back to Jersey City. I got back on the 6:35 train. And it was very strange because I was used to seeing the same faces for years and they weren't there anymore. And when I showed up that day, it's funny, we didn't know each other by name, so we all knew each other, and it got word out to some of the people within the same week. People would run up to me and from other trains because I was the only one that they knew that came back out, and they gave me a big hug and said, "It's just nice to see somebody got out." I'm in a completely different place. I joke that most people start different chapters in their life. I'm in a new book. If you told me back then I'd be in Columbus, Ohio doing what I'm doing, I'd probably look at you a little strangely. I wanted to get back to my art roots, which is what I always wanted to do anyway. It started piecing together, actually, this is gonna sound strange. I had my first dog, Mastiff, loved her to death, and she passed away. And the artist in me, I got a can of cremains back, and it just seemed terrible to me. And it did look a little bit like when I looked back on that plaza, those gray, and I didn't like it. So that's when I first took some of her cremains and I turned her into a big glass flower. And all of a sudden people started asking me to do this for their people and the people that they care about. And I realized at that point that I'm helping people now through the grieving process by turning things into something pretty. It's a combination of art therapy or grief therapy for people. I've talked to kids up through high school. I've done it now a couple times. And I tell them my story and how I've gotten stronger from it and explain to them that even though things look hopeless, it's not. And what I've been asking people to do is I have a little project that I'm slowly working on called Glass Reflections on 9/11, where after they hear me talk and I tell them to write or draw for me pictures of things that are more positive influence since they've heard me talk. What it does is two things. Number one, it puts them in a situation where they can see how they've hurt each other. And number two, it also teaches them that even if you're hurt, it doesn't have to stay that way, that you don't have to take that negative thing that happened to you and fixate it and actually cripple you. I find a lot of times events cripple people instead of them overcoming it and turning it into positives. The younger kids have been simplistic enough to have a big smiley face with a peace sign that says, "Just be happy." And it's wonderful to see that they're not closed off. So what I'm trying to do is get a hold of people before they are. And it almost sounds childlike, but in some ways, that's sort of what I want. I like the imagery of just the positive that people can actually have out of bad events. And what I'm trying to do is take those pictures and words and transfer them into plate glass and turn it into an art installation, one big collage of optimism. I think 9/11 taught me that helping others, even a little bit, is significantly more important than anything else I can do. My time is too valuable for wasting at this point.